Hello, welcome to Leveraging Financials and Analytics for Owners to Boost Productivity. I'm Cassandra Gibson, product marketer for our owners market here at Procore. Thrilled to be here with you all today. In this session, we'll be discussing how, as owners, you can make business more scalable while meeting investor obligations and making data-driven decisions, all with ease. And I know that can sound like a tall order because that is genuinely a lot, but that's why I'm joined today by Rev LNG, as they are here to tell you how they use Procore Financials and Analytics in their business. We actually have a good amount of time saved for afterward, where you can ask any questions you have, either for Rev LNG or for Procore from a product perspective. I'll introduce everyone. I won't just call them Rev and Procore, I promise. And then one more quick disclaimer before we dive into the fun stuff. We will be discussing a lot of really cool things, but please make any and all purchasing decisions based off of what is currently available. Okay, now we've made someone from legal very happy. On to the meat of the session. As we all know, there's a lot of money and interest and opportunity for growth in the owner space. But due to the unique demands of the industry, it makes the skill set that folks need also extremely unique. And that poses a lot of challenges when it comes to not only hiring, but retaining top talent, as it forces organizations to operate pretty lean. And that's what we will be discussing today. How can you meet both market and investor demand while achieving your scalability goals when you're operating with very sparse teams? Well, it comes down to helping your teams work smarter by leveraging technology as a foundation for your business so you can catapult your organization in terms of scalability and productivity. Like I said, Rev LNG will be telling you how they've done all of this, how they have built trust with their investors, how they have empowered their teams, and have even been able to emphasize their team's efficiencies, and how they have even future-proofed their business with Procore Financials and Analytics. Okay, so without further gilding the lily, I'll let them tell you their own story. But first, I'll go ahead and introduce everyone. I'm joined by TJ Forbes, Solutions Engineer and Demo Extraordinaire with me at Procore, as well as Kailey Palmer, Director of Program Management at Rev LNG, and Sirous Thampi, former VP of Innovation at Rev LNG, and now CEO and founder of Thampico. So, Sirous, I would love to hand this off to you. A couple of quick questions. One, what is Rev LNG? And two, what is with the cows? Thanks.
Thanks, Cass. And before I start, I'd like to acknowledge your shoes, TJ, also. Look at that Procore orange. Isn't that great?
We are very dedicated.
Yes.
All right, well, thanks, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon, my fellow Procorians. I'm here to talk to you a little bit about Rev LNG. So Rev LNG is a natural gas transportation, distribution, development, operations, and maintenance company. It was founded in the year 2011 as a virtual pipeline business, which means that Rev was basically using trucks to transport natural gas from points of supply to points of demand. In and around the year 2018, in the pre-COVID era, Rev started getting calls from dairy farms. So you may wonder, why were dairy farms calling a natural gas trucking company? Well, it turns out in the United States, we have a lot of really large dairy farms. And these dairy farms, as you can imagine, have thousands and thousands of head of cattle. Cattle produce a lot of manure, and in that manure, you have a lot of methane, or CH4, we call it natural gas. So that natural gas can actually be extracted and cleaned and moved to a pipeline in a process called anaerobic digestion. So Rev LNG in the year 2018 started to explore the process of building anaerobic digesters at dairy farms. And in 2020, an investor came along named South Jersey Industries, and SJI, as I call them, invested in Rev to be the developer of record for a number of dairy RNG facilities. If you hear RNG, that stands for renewable natural gas. It's just a key word for the same process I just described. I was hired on by Rev in December of 2020 to be the program manager for this portfolio of dairy RNG facilities. And so taking my job, the first thing I realized is I needed a system. I needed a way of organizing these projects and getting more value out of them. But I had a number of challenges to overcome. The first challenge was dealing with the investor itself. And for those of you in the audience who are owners, you understand there are challenges in dealing with investors. Well, we had a particularly ambitious investor that really wanted to grow in the renewable energy space. And we had to provide them with the information they required on time and in a manner that they wanted it. The second challenge we had is we had a tremendous amount of growth in projects. So we had an opportunity in front of us that we wanted to capture by growing at lightning speed, and we didn't have any scalable processes in place that would allow us to capture those opportunities. And the third challenge, this being a new industry in the United States, there was no available talent in the market that we could go out and hire to build our teams. So we needed to make the most out of the teams that we had, the individuals that we had at the company. And we needed a system to allow us to do that. So that system, obviously, was Procore. And that was clearly one of the ways that we were able to resolve these challenges. And the other way was, standing right over here, Ms. Kailey Palmer, who joined the program management team in November of 2021. Within 8 months of joining, Kailey had done such a great job that I found myself no longer of service to the company. And I decided to go out and do what I had done for Rev for other companies across many industries, but particularly in the energy space. So Kailey, I'm going to turn it over to you and ask you to tell us, how did Procore resolve these challenges for Rev LNG?
Sure. Thank you, Sirous. So as Sirous explained, we didn't have the processes in place and we were growing at lightning speed. Not only that, we had to work with an investor that had ambitious demands about getting in that waste to energy space. And so we instituted Procore, and then what happened was astounding. We had 733% portfolio growth in 1 year. Just to give you some history, previous to Procore, we had PMs working on 1 to 2 projects. Now we have PMs working on 6 to 7 projects, usually with more than 2 in active construction concurrently. We were able to not only convince our investor that we were worth the investment, but also that we were worth continual investment. So we have a portfolio guaranteed for 3 years. 733% growth took a lot of investment and in utilizing the tools that we had in place with Procore. And today we're going to talk about that in 3 specific areas. We're going to talk about what it looks like to build that trust with your investor and how you can use Procore analytics to do that. We're going to talk about what it means to really invest in your team and empower them with the tools that Procore has to offer, specifically in financials and analytics. And then we're also going to talk about future-proofing that business. So in terms of investors, what we needed to do is provide them repeatable, scalable processes so that we could report to them on a regular cadence. We had to compel our investors that we were prepared to handle the volume that they were willing to give us. So we provided complete transparency and visibility with the Procore analytics tools. We were able to streamline complexity with dynamic real-time reporting, and that was really what allowed us to build trust with our investors. Sirous, let's pretend that you're the investor. As the owner, what is it that you're looking for from me?
Okay, so if I were an investor, which is interesting because usually I'm the one asking for money, what I would want is real-time reporting on projects. I want to know what's going on with these projects right now, and I want it immediately as of today, not as of what was happening at the end of last month, and not in a week or 2 from now. What can you show me that would tell me about my projects?
So that's really where Procore Financials and Analytics allows you to customize your reporting. By being able to provide the streamlined, regular information to the investor, they had confidence in what we were doing with their portfolio. And so we would build custom reports. As you can see, this is an investor biweekly report. And then we would take the information from Procore without any data manipulation, and we would report to them on a biweekly cadence. An estimate a complete versus spend to date, the investor had the information that they needed at their fingertips in a matter of minutes.
And as the investor, obviously I love having that view because it gives me the clarity and the insight based on your accurate reporting as to what's going on with the projects.
Right, so having that visibility and transparency allowed for confidence in what we were doing. It allowed for the investor to ask real-time questions and not wait for a team of accountants or financial analysts to provide the information that they needed in real time. And it provided a level of transparency and agility that Rev really wanted to give our investors so that they could continue investing in our portfolio.
I should add that you could also grant your investor access to your Procore depending on the permission level. So they can actually go in themselves and generate these reports, or at least get access to the information that you want them to see when it comes to your particular projects.
Yeah. So we were able to take a robust set of data and manipulate it on demand. And then we were able to standardize those reports and pull them as needed anytime a request came in. So for example, if an investor was concerned about spend on a particular project, they could bring that to our attention.
Mm-hmm. We all know that responding to investors isn't easy, and it certainly isn't easy when you have a small team. And at Rev, we had basically Kailey and myself to respond to a public utility company, asking us about the status of dozens of projects. So the ability to go in and do that was really based on our data foundation. So within Procore, as you've all heard the saying, garbage in, garbage out, we built a solid data foundation. And then from there, we built our processes so that our team could go in and generate the reports that they needed within a matter of minutes, if not seconds, and distribute those over to the investor.
Previously, if someone had been given a request to report to the investor, especially about financials on a project, they were pulling from Excel documents. So once we standardized what was available in Procore, made those views accessible to both the investor and to the PM team, everyone was singing from the same piece of music as opposed to reporting what they wanted to report. And so we standardized those views, empowered our teams, and then there was that single source of truth in Procore. That single source of truth has become critical to our success and to moving forward and to growing at the speed that we are growing today.
And so here's why that might be important. So let's say the investor comes to you, they got that first report. Remember the one we showed earlier, which had the spend by project, and they say, it looks like you spent a lot more money on this one project in the last time period than we had anticipated. Basically you blew the forecast. What happened? What happened with that one project? So what we would do in that case, as TJ and Kailey are about to show us, you could go into the analytics and you can hone in on a particular project by the time period, and you can really identify the spend, and I'll leave it to you, Kailey, to explain that further.
Right. So by standardizing the forecast of spend, it allowed our investor to have a pretty good idea of where we were spending their money on a monthly basis, which allowed for them to plan with their treasury. That's critical to the success of a growing portfolio, and it also, again, provides that visibility and transparency for the program management team as a whole. And the last part is about future-proofing our business. So by using Procore's financial and analytics piece, we've been able to create sustainable, scalable processes that allows for us to take on even more work and to really empower the teams to challenge what we're doing and be more efficient.
And as Kailey had mentioned, that really comes into play when it comes to forecasting. So, a lot of you who work with investors, you get requests from the investor, maybe their treasury department will reach out and say, we need to know where you plan on spending money in the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, or thereabouts. And so with Procore, within the Procore itself, you can set up your forecasts in a way that you don't have to manipulate the data. You go into analytics and you can pull a forecast out that is very clear and visible to your investors. And that's typically what it would look like when we produce reports for our investor.
So with Procore as the foundation and in utilizing Procore analytics and financials, we've been able to grow and scale at a rate that we never thought possible previously. And subsequently, we've created great relationships with our investor and are looking to further diversify into that waste to energy space. And all of it is as a result of this relationship with Procore. And we're really excited to continue that relationship moving forward.
So Rev set out to meet both market and investor demand, but they needed the right tools in order to do so, which is what brought them to Procore and leveraging Procore financials and analytics. So thank you so much, Kailey, Sirous, for telling us how you use Procore, sharing your story with us. Really appreciate your time. And we'd love to answer any and all questions. So now happy to facilitate some Q&A. Questions you have for Rev LNG based on how they use Procore financials and analytics, or even some questions for TJ, our Procore expert. So you can see how you can leverage this for your business. What questions do you have? Any curiosities in the audience?
Did you give your investors the ability to drill down in their stuff, or did you just give them the opportunity to view a PDF?
No, they have visibility into the data. To restate the question, he asked if we provided our investors with full access to the data, and the answer is yes. If they are interested in looking at something that pertains to their particular project, then we do allow them to have full visibility.
And she mentioned a good point, which is to their project. So Rev is a developer of record for an investor, but Rev also develops its own projects, so they can segment, the access that way, essentially.
You in the back.
What are some key performance indicators that analytics help you uncover that allow you to know that you can further scale the business?
I think for us, firstly, was, when you think of the efficiency of these projects, essentially, firstly, I should point out the projects are largely still in the construction stage, so we haven't completed the projects, right? And I should also point out that we started off with a delivery approach that was EPC, and we made a transition to an EPCM, a managed delivery approach throughout. And so essentially, when we're using analytics, a lot of the things we're looking for is where are we spending money by WBS, by cost code, right? We're looking at what are the general areas, the contractors that we're working with, and how much are we spending with them? What's the time they're taking as far as their submittals? Other areas would be in terms of our internal staff, who's getting involved and what are they doing, what are they working on. But our ability to scale was a combination of things. I don't know necessarily that it had as much to do with identifying KPIs out of analytics. There were other factors that went into it. But analytics was helpful in terms of improving the efficiency of our performance, certainly over time, and in terms of building that confidence with the investor. So they felt like we knew where we were with the projects, and we were delivering at the pace that they wanted to go at. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would also agree. I would also add that having that visibility into what we had done with the first pod, right, versus what we were doing with the second pod was really critical to kind of reinstating that faith relationship that we were not only great stewards of their financial obligation, but also that we were learning from our mistakes.
So in terms of the GCs, were they in their account on Procore, or were they on your account on Procore? And how did you negotiate that if they had their own engagement with Procore?
Our investor does not have an engagement with
No,
Procore.
the GCs.
The GCs. Okay, so the GCs operate in our Procore, and that is contractual.
Some of them have their own Procore, and certainly they'd like to charge us for that. But when we, as the owner, provide Procore, then obviously we want them to work in our Procore. Yeah.
The forecasting dashboard that you put up and walk us through what we're looking at. I'm curious about that.
Yeah, so I'll walk you through since I'm the one driving it. So on a project level, there's forecasts that are happening, from month to month on every particular project, right? How much are we expecting to put in place in January versus February versus March, right? And so Procore is directly plugged into those forecasts at the project level so that when you report it up here into the portfolio level, you're able to see all of that as your whole portfolio, but you also do have these filters that you're able to filter that by investor or by region or by a project manager if you want to do it that way. So it does give you that ability to select a group, maybe even select one that you can see maybe how is this farm going to be doing over the next few months. I can change the date ranges to do maybe a little bit longer of a forecast, 24 months versus 12 months. Or maybe we want to just track one particular thing, right? The materials I may need over the next few months because of inflation and other types of things. So the key with that is that the forecasting is happening at the project level. However, analytics is able to plug into that in live data, and as that data changes, you're able to see that at a higher level, a 50,000-foot level, and feel the sensitivity to that and manipulate that and mold that in however you want to see it.
I would just add that if you don't have the analytics, it's well worth it for the forecast as well as some of the detail you can get on the invoicing side and some of the financials. That's what we primarily used it for, and I think it was well worth the investment in terms of the time and obviously the cost relating to that. You can do certain things with custom reports that are helpful in Procore itself, but the analytics just makes it so much easier.
So my question is, we've been looking at the analytics book, but I see a lot of this Power BI stuff. Is the Power BI part of analytics, or is it a separate thing?
Really good question. So it's being funneled through Power BI as kind of the medium. However, Procore does have a analytics package which comes with 150 reports out of the box, right? Pre-built. And they're like industry best reports, right? Reports that owners are using today to be able to identify really quickly, to be able to take advantage of opportunities and avoid threats quite quickly, right? And we could run through some of those if you want at the end. I can't show you 150, but I can show you some of maybe more of the popular ones. But I think the key to it is that this is plugged directly into Procore. It's pre-built, and it's giving you that financial awareness, even at a 50,000 foot view, but within about 3 or 4 clicks, you're able to actually drill down into that source of data, right? So typically, this is just a common scenario, my financial position on a project has changed. Well, I didn't realize that this was an issue. So with the click of a button, I can jump into that button, into that budget. Oh, someone has just, created a $50,000 change order against a $35,000 budget. Well, that doesn't make sense. And again, with the click of a button, I can jump into that change order and see the reason why, right? So the fact that it's actually plugged in to the actual source of truth, you're getting that real-time financial awareness, even at 50,000 feet in the air. So, does that answer the question?
I think so. I was trying to see if these were 2 different things, or if they were one, and it sounds like they're one that builds on each
Yes.
other. Okay.
I think there was a
Yes.
question here.
So you mentioned Procore being your single source of truth. How do you integrate or connect with your accounting system?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
So we have QuickBooks, but what's interesting about our investor relationship is that the investor is responsible for a majority of our expenses. And so they actually will go in and they will indicate which invoices are paid in their system, which is Workday. And then we have a record of that in Procore.
Yeah, the accounting is a really important issue that I think a lot of businesses overlook, and that's really one of the reasons that I selected Procore for Rev is our accountant, individual, was on QuickBooks and was not going to get off QuickBooks. And so I had to find a system that would be compatible with QuickBooks if I wanted the accounting to be integrated. Of course, you can run project management without having accounting integrated, but having managed businesses before, I knew that would be a big time saver, and it really has proved to be.
We do not use Workday. Our investor uses Workday. And so they are essentially creating a record in Procore of the payments that they've made in their system.
So just as an example also, what you see on the screen is kind of an integration, right? We have a Workday integration coming. We have a QuickBooks integration. So if you are interested in getting that information back and forth between accounting, the concept of that is if we have one of those pre-built connectors, anything that is entered into Procore can be pushed to the accounting system and approved. And anything that's cost or payments that are posted in the accounting system can then be in the operation system, which is Procore, so that communication is happening pretty effectively as well.
Is there a way to test or forecast at a given point in time that I can go look back and say, we did a forecast 3 months ago, I can go back and see how our actuals came in and how close they were to that forecast?
Most certainly, you can do that in you can do that in analytics, right? So that you can in Procore you have this ability to create a snapshot. So and I'll try to see if I could just give an example, or maybe I'll give one at the end, where you're saying as of last month, here's where everything was, and I made even forecasts on a line item by line item basis. That's frozen so that there's no more cost that's coming in or any change orders or anything that I change. None of that changes. I still have the ability to interact with it, right? I can still click into those cells to see what existed at that time. But now that I'm in a new month, I can now take those 2 months and compare them against each other, or this month versus last year, or this quarter versus last quarter. So I do have that ability to freeze where I am right now today. And most of our customers like to take those snapshots at the end of every month, before or after a big revision, or or before and after a fiscal year.
Can you compare those snapshots in analytics, or do you have to do it out?
You can certainly compare those snapshots in analytics. Let me see if I can pull up a quick example. But we do have that ability to do it there.
You need to have analytics to do it.
So if you don't want to pull it up in analytics, what I would recommend doing, and what I've done before in the past, is Procore is cloud-based, right? It's in a web browser, so you can go web browser versus web browser and go line by line. Or, again, analytics can bring it into a report here like this for you. And if I just want to look at the snapshot for one single job, if I'm looking at, say, a particular forecast for one thing versus where we are this month, I'm able to track those things against one another.
Go ahead.
So each line item is inputted in terms of what the PM thinks for life cycle, including the curve that's applied to that line item. And subsequently, we can adjust forecast as needed. But yes, so it does reflect our 15-month project cycle.
Go ahead.
You mentioned that your resources are able to do more now.
Mm-hmm.
You have to manage more projects. What did you find through Procore that through analytics that really helped kind of ease their workload so they can take on more?
I think ease their workload is maybe not the right phrase, right? We have a really lean, high-performing team, and the work is momentous. However, having this tool has really empowered them to do the same thing over and over again in a repeatable way. And then that has given them the opportunity to handle more volume. Do I think that a PM should have 7 to 9 projects on their plate? Absolutely not. But we can do it, and we're doing it. And that's what our investor wants, is that speed. So we're going to continue to operate that way.
So specifically, what tools in Procore are you leveraging to make that happen?
We use forecasting a lot. Forecasting is probably the most talked about part of what we do, so that the investor knows exactly how we're spending their money on a monthly basis. Just to give you an idea, we have 50 projects right now in the pipeline. So there's no shortage of work, and ensuring that we're moving through the first pod into the second pod concurrently is the top of mind for everyone. So I would say forecasting. I would say that we use a lot of standardized reporting on a daily basis, on a monthly basis. Our PM team works together to kind of collaboratively see where there are opportunities for improvement, especially when it comes to schedule and pricing. Yeah, and I'm happy to take it offline if you want more details about what we're doing and how we're doing it.
So over time, how accurate did you find that the expected forecast met what was actually done at that point in time? And part of our struggle is we have an expectation at a point in time.
Mm-hmm.
If that date shifts or the curve shifts,
Yeah.
that will, they're all either our backlog or what we have reflected.
Yeah, you're right. And change orders really can goof that up, right? I would say that to TJ's point, having that snapshot, having that historical data is really critical, so that you can essentially utilize that forecasting tool as a learning opportunity. We just did a lessons learned event, and one of the big things that came out of that is that we needed to do more snapshots. We needed to be able to kind of track where it was getting so out of line, and what we could do to work with our contractors to ensure that the communication was there before it was a surprise. But I would say overall that the forecasting tool has provided visibility that we wouldn't have had otherwise. And the snapshots especially, even if it's $5,000, I want to know about it. Exactly.
Go ahead.
Do you have like a regular cadence that you took snapshots, and if so, how did you manage doing that over your whole portfolio?
Yeah. Initially, it was monthly. It was at month end. And now it's like every 2 weeks. Just to, again, that benchmark. We're still relatively new in this space, even though we have so many projects and even though we're moving so quickly. And so we're kind of learning as we go as well. So I would say, if anything, set up a cadence that works for you, and then evaluate that in 3 months, 6 months, and see if it was applicable to what you're doing and what you wanted to benchmark.
So do you have to go into like each project separately when you're here? Is that like a manual process?
Mm-hmm.
You would just click this button here. But yeah, you would have to click it in each project.
So maybe questions for this week who hasn't done the snapshot yet?
Yeah, certainly. So the way that you can take that snapshot, you can, in analytics also, you have the ability to filter by date, right? So the way that I would do that, if I had to track for that, I would say, show me all the snapshots done in between April 1st and April 20th or April 15th, and you would see a drastic 0 for the projects that haven't done it yet. So I would use filtering to be able to weed out those ones.
Go ahead.
For monthly reports that we're doing after the month end close, we sometimes find we want to make an adjustment, like a budget adjustment, into a previous period, which I don't think is available. Is there any solution that you'll have for that? So I can do more reporting right out of Procore.
Yeah, so it seems like it's a bit of an accounting question. So kind of like backdating, like some costs that may have been posted after the month, back into the month. Is that the question?
More budget changes.
Pardon me?
Changes to the budget.
Okay, so today, the budget snapshot, once it's taken, it's done, right? You can take as many as you want. So what I would suggest in that instance, even if you take a snapshot on the 30th and you want to change that snapshot, you can create another snapshot on the 1st, and that could just be the snapshot of record for the month, right? This can be, you can have June A and then June B, and June B would supersede June A in that instance.
Go ahead.
Really the Procore analytics data set, it refreshes like once daily, right? So it's not the exact real-time information from the production live database. Is there any opportunity to get a more frequent refresh rate or more time-sensitive data?
Yeah, you can force it.
You can force it. We also do offer a multi-day as well. I'm not keen on those details, but if you reach out to your CSM, we do have a multi-day version of the analytics update.
Yeah, we just go
A
in and refresh
multi-fresh
it before we
per day.
run the report.
Go ahead.
Are there any plans to allow you to schedule snapshots so it doesn't require somebody to go there and click make snapshot?
Feverishly working on it. In the back end, it's webhooks and trying to create that. But that is certainly one of the things that are on the top of the list for our product is working on. This is not a promise of it being here tomorrow, but it's some of the designs that I've seen is that, we're looking at a budget, and like how you're able to go back to the version of something like in Microsoft Word or Microsoft Excel, maybe even down to a daily basis. We're thinking of it that way, right? So like I can just backtrack into my budget and see the version of my budget, what it was at 2 p.m. on the 13th of February, right? So that's what we're looking at and the way we're trying to design it. And we're putting resources into that because it's such a common ask.
And go ahead, and I think we'll have time for maybe 2 more questions. Did you have your hand raised? Okay, made that up. 2 more questions? Go ahead.
If your accounting software that you're forecasting, and you're doing the forecasting, can't take in that information, so that ERP link doesn't work as well for every accounting, how are you getting the forecasting information?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So for most of our customers that are not ERP integrated or they don't have that connection point, Procore does have very robust reporting. Quite honestly, if you can imagine something, and it's in a field in Procore, you can click and drag it into a report. You can even put it into the format that's easily imported into that ERP system if you would like. But at the very worst scenario, you can create a report with that information. And Procore actually has automation on delivering those reports to your accounting team. So you can actually set up a distribution for that report. A very common scenario is every time there's invoices approved in Procore, we want to send all of those approved invoices to my accounting team on Monday morning at 8 a.m., right? So if there was anything approved over the last 7 days, that would be delivered to them. So in an instance where there isn't an integration point, you have the ability to take advantage of our automated distribution of any reports that you may design and want to send over to anybody who's not in Procore.
Awesome. Unless there's one more question, long pause.
I'll be hanging out out back if anybody wants any more questions or examples as well.
Yeah, we'll have Rev and TJ outside to answer any more questions for about 10 minutes. Thank you all so much for joining. If you're in public sector, I'm so happy. If you're in public sector, feel free to join a public owner's perspective in room 290 at 2:50 p.m. Thank you.